I would also say that's hurting Canada's international reputation in ways that Canadians just don't seem to realize, including among moderate liberal types.
Well, let's go first with the media, and the fact that the media, the main media in this country, the legacy, call them what you will, have accepted a devil's handshake. It simply cannot be otherwise said that the press, the media, the instruments of inquiry, skepticism, and test can be directly subsidized by the one major institution, the whole government, which in many ways they are charged by their very nature to investigate, to be skeptical about, to inquire, to collide with, to contest. And the idea that in this soft environment, you accept huge sums of money. Now, by the way, in addition to the money, that's a really big thing, and it should be a shock to any journalist. Here's another thing that gives you an even deeper, and I think in certain ways, a more worrisome collusion. And that is that the mindset of the majority, and I'm not one of these conspiracy people about the press, but I know it enough from 25 or 26 years in it, that the mindset, the mentality, the tendency, the major media offices of Parliament Hill and are already in tune with the agenda of the government. They are constantly, either indirectly, subtly, or not so subtly, actually supporting the government and making themselves the opposition to the opposition. It is really quite remarkable.
Friends, we will soon be in the election campaign, and it can be a time of harsh words and sometimes hard feelings. I made some jokes tonight and I had some fun, but I want you to know that I admire and appreciate the very important work of journalists and media. I especially want to thank you for the impartial and fair and totally non-biased way that you covered my leadership and the NDP. No, to be serious though, we are here tonight in part to celebrate the World Press Freedom Day. And as you all know, all over the world, journalists are in danger just for doing their jobs, asking tough questions and telling inconvenient truths. A free press is truly essential in a thriving democracy. In Canada, we are lucky to have journalists such as yourselves who are dedicated and who are principled, and we can never take this for granted.
Yeah, but let's tie this together. Why do you think he thought it was very useful to have a Zoom parliament for another year? Because the gathering together of all the people who might wake up to this and who might, because of personal interactions across the lines, might see that this is not a step too far. This is a gigantic leap between mountain peaks too far. You don't let power determine information, thought, and speech. I mean, if Donald Trump were president and decided to regulate the internet, 9/10 of the world would fly up. Justin could go on about how horrific the justice system of the Supreme Court is, while up here he plays a game halfway between Animal Farm and 1984. It's because they share the agenda. They share the social identities business. They certainly share the diversity thing, the obsession with racialist politics, and of course the absorption entirely on the idea of sexual identity and proto. In other words, all of the social justice issues, the press and the parliament are in the same place.
The press was also an independent check, and now the press is in the pockets of the government. And I called that fascist earlier, and I meant that. What we're seeing worldwide is a fascist enterprise, weirdly enough, on the left side, that involves a collusion between media, technology, and government. And fascism, the root of the word fascism, means to bind together. And the central, right, exactly. The central element of a fascist state is collusion of the elites, let's say, and the eradication of any checks and balances. And that's reminiscent to me of the desirability of that is reminiscent to me of Trudeau's express admiration for the Chinese Communist Party and its efficiency in moving forward, let's say, on the environmental front.
catch that? Did you catch that? These are bad people. We live in a time where the people who pretend to be the good people are the bad people.
Everyone's got peer pressure at this age. I mean, there's pressure to smoke, there's pressure to do all sorts of stuff. And I've never been affected by peer pressure. Never. Never. Never.
My father had an approach to politics that not everyone agreed with. And no matter how nice and good and smart any politician is, there's always going to be people who disagree with some of the decisions. Because really, in politics, you do have to make big decisions, and whenever you make big decisions, there's going to be people who agree with it and people who don't disagree with it. And some of the decisions my father made, there were a number of people who disagreed with quite intensely, and they didn't always get along the best way. But he always thought about what was right for Canada and worked very, very hard to try and build a better country for everyone within it. That didn't work for everyone, and not everyone was happy with that, but he made a mark on this country that shapes us to this day.
And I've watched him repeatedly, and I've listened to him a lot, and I've tried to do that clinically and with some degree of dispassion. And that's hard, too, because his father, Pierre, devastated the West in 1982 with the national energy policy. And Trudeau is doing exactly the same thing again. And so as a Westerner as well, I have an inbuilt animus, and one that's well-deserved, because Central Canada, especially the glittery, literati elite types in the Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto triangle, have exploited the West and expressed contempt for the West far too much for far too long. And that's accelerating at the moment, for example, with Trudeau's recent attack on the Canadian farmers. He's an enemy of the oil and gas industry, which is an utter and absolute bloody catastrophe. And look what's happened in Europe, at least in partial consequence. And he's no friend to the farmers. So I've tried to steel man him, you know. I try to put myself in the position of the people that I'm criticizing. I think he's a narcissist.
It's because of him that this school has a big successful immersion program. I mean, these are things that made a big difference right across the country. And we should be very proud of that. Similarly, I'm going to make decisions, and I have made decisions that some people like and some people don't like. And ultimately, what you have to be confident about is you have to know in your heart and in your brain that the decisions you're making are the right ones, that you've listened to the people who want you to do this, you've listened to the people who don't want you to do this, and you've made a decision.
We live in a time where the people who pretend to be the good people are the bad people.
And what is the best interest for Canadians now and in the future, and that's what I stay focused on.
There's pressure to do all sorts of stuff, and I've never been affected by peer pressure. Never. 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 I've never been affected by peer pressure. Never. Never. Never.
Volunteers who was there accused the Prime Minister of disrupting the relief effort for a photo op. Take a listen.
I'm glad to be here with my kids. We just filled sandbags for 15 minutes.
But you held people up.
Sorry.
All your RCMP and security held people up from getting their stuff.
I understand your frustration around security. I live frustrations with security every day of my life right now. That's something that unfortunately is a reality
of my life.
Look at the time you've taken. I'm happy to be here.
They're about to open these dams.
Do you know how long you've held up people picking up bags? I've been waiting in line down the road for 30 minutes while you've been here soaking up the race. Thank you. You know?
Excuse me. Excuse me.
You're not getting my vote. This is a free country.
It is
It's a free country, and I'm trying to speak. To him, and he won't even acknowledge me. Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm sorry for your challenge. not my challenge. I'm a volunteer trying to help someone save their home.
Sir, we've been filling sandbags as well.
Yeah.
Okay?
And you know, while you're here, nobody can pick up.
I am here.
While you're here, no one can pick up
I don't know
sand.
that, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, why don't you make yourself aware?
We are going to.
You know, I was with a guy who was a staunch conservative, and he said if you'd actually do work, he'd change his vote and vote for you.
Sorry, sir.
That's sincerity.
I just spent half an hour. Can you listen to me, sir, now that I've listened to you?
Yeah, I'll listen.
Okay. I'm glad to be here with my kids. We just filled sandbags for 15 minutes,
you
which
held
isn't
people
enough.
up.
Sorry.
All
sir,
your RCMP and
sir,
security
sir,
held people up from getting their
I can
stuff.
understand your frustration around security. I live frustrations with security every day of my life right now. That's something that unfortunately is a reality of my life. But I'm happy to be here.
They're about to open these dams.
I'm happy to be here to speak with you, to listen to you, to speak with all and to encourage more Canadians to come out and volunteer. More people are coming and volunteer because
I volunteered, but I was in a truck for an hour waiting while you were here with a photo op.
I have
the most insincere thing I've ever seen.
I'm sorry, sir. That's unfriendly and unneighborly today. We're here to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
be
sir.
neighborly.
That's what I would say. I'm here to debate with all Canadians, for whom I have the utmost respect.
See whether these families, or find out which families would be suitable for a photo op for the Prime Minister's re-election campaign? That's disgusting.
Thank you.
Justin! Hi, Justin. I'm telling you to see me. I'm David. I'm telling you to see me right here.
Thank you. We should tell them about the second home. I would say in Canada. We live in a world in which our blackness has been
That's disgusting.
Wouldn't $1 billion be better served going into women's shelters?
Hey, sir. We need to stand against domestic violence. We need to stand against death by suicide. What would be better served? $1 billion in women's shelters?
I haven't seen just one life is worth it. Hunters and farmers are committing domestic violence. Stop criminalizing hunters and farmers! Woo! That's all. Overwhelmingly, when you gun control.
Wouldn't $1 billion be better served going into women's shelters?
Hey, sir. We need to stand against domestic violence. We need to stand against death by suicide. What would be better served? $1 billion in women's shelters?
I haven't seen just one life is worth it. Hunters and farmers are committing domestic violence. Stop criminalizing hunters and farmers! Woo! That's all.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a brief visit to the Okanagan today. He spent some time at a daycare, at a farm, and here at the BC Tree Fruits production facility. Reporters were told beforehand that he would not be taking questions, and they stuck with that plan. During the facility, he went into the shop where members of the public were surprised to see him.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hi. What's your name?
I'm Kim.
Kim? What's your name?
Ellen.
Ellen, what are you getting today? For the fruit to go?
Yeah, I'm to get cherries too.
Get cherries too? Okay,
Yeah.
well, we'll get out of your way.
It's okay, it's just a little over.
It's a little
It's a nice surprise. Nice.
What's your name? Chris. Chris, nice to meet you. Well, thank you so much. See you guys.
Yeah, enjoy your stay.
What's the purpose of a stop like the one he did today, where he goes to 3 places and a pretty tight agenda? What's he trying to accomplish with a visit like this?
Well, I mean, he's trying to connect with Canadians.
McDonald is a successful millionaire businessman who's throwing a $1,000 a plate dinner for Trudeau, who says he represents the average Canadian.
We know the Conservative Party has very, very deep pockets, and we need to make sure that we're giving Canadians a better choice in the next government.
The economy is now 103% the size it was before COVID hit. So far this year, our economic growth has been the strongest in the G7. And when we get through the coming global slowdown, with the COVID recession behind us, there is no country in the world better placed than Canada to thrive. The global economy is at a turning point. The green transition is the most significant economic transformation since the Industrial Revolution itself. And we're entering an era of friendshoring, a time when our democratic partners and their most important companies are looking to shift their dependence from dictatorships to democracies.
Oh, these people, they got trucks, that could be a Nazi, there's no way of knowing. These people, under the mask of liberalism, under the bouffon of friendliness, are always trying to push one clear agenda. Give us more power, give up your individual freedom, so that we can support the interests of globalists, technocracies, and corporations without the inconvenience of democratic intervention.
And with the Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now, he's exactly like a tyrant, like a dictator. He's like Ceausescu in Romania. If even you doubt, if you raise doubts about the vaccines, you're outcasted. What's the difference between what he does and what happened under the Inquisition? See, on one side they say, well, we should not believe in God, but on the other side they say, believe in science. We don't have to. Science is not about belief. Science is about measurements, conclusions, hypotheses, and arguments. We got to a point right now where even if you say something, if you raise any doubts, you're already considered, as they label you in very different ways. This is not okay. And I have to tell you, that when I saw the protests in Canada, the way the truckers over there reacted, I got in touch with some of them, others contacted me, I congratulated them, and I want to use this opportunity to thank them. And I hope this movement for freedom and for rights is spreading all around the world. Because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that all these elected officials, they understand that they were elected in those offices to work for the people, not to behave like masters of slaves. Thank you.
Građani, premijeru Trudeau. Sloboda, pravo izbora, pravo na život i zdravlje, pravo na rad za mnoge od nas, to su temeljna ljudska prava za koje su milijuni građana Europe i svijeta položili svoje živote. Za obranu naših prava i prava naše djece, koje smo stjecali stoljećima, mnogi od nas, uključujući i mene, spremni smo riskirati vlastitu slobodu i položiti vlastite živote. Nažalost, danas su među nama i oni koji gaze te temeljne vrijednosti. Kanada, nekada simbol modernog svijeta, je pod vodstvom vaše kvazi liberalne čizme proteklih mjeseci postala simbol kršenja temeljnih ljudskih prava i građanskih sloboda. Gledali smo kako konjima gaze žene, kako samohranim roditeljima blokirate bankovne račune, da ne mogu platiti djeci školovanje, da ne mogu platiti lijekove, da ne mogu platiti račune za struju i vodu, da ne mogu platiti rate kredita za svoje domove. Za vas su to možda liberalne metode. Međutim, za mnoge građane svijeta to je diktatura najgore vrste.
A prime minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this house at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Of the flag. Please look in the direction of the photographer in front of the flags. Dear sitting near Carter Sado, please look to the back in the direction of the photographers in front of the flags.
Wanted to start first off with your reaction to the economic statement today. What do you think of it?
Well, for a prime minister who said he was going to have the back of Canadians in tough times, it looks like he's turned his back on Canadians wondering about what they're going to do to afford their home heating with the cost of energy rising, while record profits are being made by oil and gas companies. And at the time when we're seeing corporate grocery stores making massive profits, a recent report says that Loblaws was making $1 million a day in excess profits. People are still having a hard time with their groceries. And there's really no supports in place that are going to help people get through this tough time. Changes to EI to make sure people are prepared for a potential recession and that there's support there for them if they lose their jobs. And something to really respond to the serious crisis in our healthcare system. None of that's been in this economic update.
C-11 that has a free trade agreement with all G7 countries. Our government, under our Prime Minister and the Minister of International Trade, as diversifying trade, investing in Canadian businesses, making sure that we're creating wealth.
We need assistance for a member. Medical assistance.
And I think you'll all agree the food tonight was pretty great, but I was hoping for sushi. I love Chinese food. Before we begin, I need to recognize the Parliamentary Press Gallery's sponsors who made tonight possible and who contribute significantly to the hard work you all do. Our bronze level sponsor is once again the Aga Khan Foundation. At the silver level, we've got the Government of India. And finally, this year's Press Gallery dinner's gold sponsor is none other than C-11. Thank you all for your donations. Thank you for your donations. And then there's C-11. I was actually told that it would be inappropriate for me to comment on ongoing court cases. Now, SNC-Lavalin is perhaps the most Canadian scandal there ever was. And most people agree that no laws were broken, but we're going to keep talking about it because we promised to keep Canadian journalism alive. I guess for me, the silver lining is that you guys forgot about all those other times we shot ourselves in the foot. Huh? Oh, yeah, there's more. For you guys in the corners, it's all India. Ah, the good old days.
I'm not a fan of Trudeau because I don't think he's capable of saying an honest word, and I truly mean that. And I've watched his speeches over and over, watching to see what's going on with him, and all I see is acting.
Carbon and carbon emissions and carbon is part of everything we do, whether it's heating our homes or getting back and forth from work. We are facing a challenge where we have to change behaviors. And it is important that those changes happen in a way that doesn't penalize our most vulnerable, that doesn't make it more difficult for families who are already stretched thin to succeed.
These people are the emperors and empresses of conspicuous consumption, and they don't understand that that is the problem, and that what they are asking people to do when they protest against the oil sands is for the rest of us to lower our standard of living.
Well, speaking of someone whom most of us actually just simply measure by the standards of a celebrity anyway, it has once been said by Adlai Stevenson that a politician is a hypocrite, the type that will cut down a redwood tree, then sit on the stump and give you a lecture about conservation. I'm, of course, talking about our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, because, Gloria, if we were shocked that he used 2 planes during the federal election, we now hear about, as the Toronto Sun is reporting, 5 different planes to his family's trip back and forth, Costa Rica, Canada.
Yeah. And with Trudeau, it's different. Trudeau has the power to affect our lives. He's put in a carbon tax, which is going to cost, it's going to raise the cost of living. In order to lead, to get society to do what you want, you can't just talk the talk, which is what Trudeau does. Mm-hmm. You have to walk the walk. He doesn't walk the walk. He expects us to rein in our belts, lower our standard of living, because that's what this is ultimately about.
No, Justin Trudeau likes to fly the planes.
And he changes nothing. During, like what, they went to Costa Rica with a bunch of planes. That's nothing new for Trudeau. During the election, he was just in 2 planes. And Brian, our reporter, pointed out the second plane was one of the biggest, gas guzzlers in the world. And so that's what Trudeau doesn't get. Then they say, well, he's buying carbon offsets. That is nonsense. Carbon offsets are like a fat man paying a thin man to go on a diet and thinking he's going to lose weight. The only way you lower emissions is by not admitting them in the first place. And setting what is more important for a politician than to set an example? He sets the wrong example, and that's why there's this tremendous public cynicism about climate change and global warming. It's for that reason.
The leader of the Liberal Party has an opportunity to respect the fact that heating your home in January and February in Canada is not a luxury. And it does not make those Canadians polluters. They're just trying to survive. This from a Prime Minister who burned more jet fuel in 1 month than 20 average Canadians burn in an entire year. So will the Prime Minister ground the jet, park the hypocrisy, and axe the tax hikes?
Similarly, I'm going to make decisions, and I have made decisions that some people like and some people don't like. And ultimately, what you have to be confident about is you have to know in your heart and in your brain that the decisions you're making are the right ones, that you've listened to the people who want you to do this, you've listened to the people who don't want you to do this, and you've made a decision in what is the best interest for Canadians now and in the future, and that's what I stay focused on.
I've never been affected by peer pressure. Never.
I'm here to debate with all Canadians. Move past old talking points. They're empty. They're useless. They don't actually advance the debate. They're empty. They're useless. They don't actually advance the debate. That's what I would say.
I'm asking you, Mr. Trudeau, and here is my question today.
How do you justify to a mother of 4 children, 3 grandchildren, physical disabilities, and working up to 15 hours a day, how is it justified for you to ask me to pay a carbon tax when I only have $65 left of my paycheck every 2 weeks to feed my family?
We have to listen when women who do a double shift say they need quality childcare. We have to listen, and then we have to act.
The Prime Minister has effectively admitted that his carbon tax has not worked, and therefore he needs to triple it. According to the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, the forthcoming hike in the carbon tax will mean that the total cost for a Newfoundland senior living in the countryside on their heating bill will have been 80%. Canadians cannot afford that. But just for clarity, if you are a Newfoundland senior, how much will your home heating bill rise as a result of the forthcoming hike in the Liberal carbon tax?
The Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're going to continue to stay focused on direct and real help for Canadians, responding to the challenges they're facing with meaningful measures that are going to help millions of Canadians in the middle class and those working hard to join it. Leader of the Opposition.
We will not support tax hikes on Canadians. Speaking of tax hikes, they plan to raise taxes on paychecks. Now, yesterday, the Finance Minister claimed that all the EI tax hikes that they would collect would go to EI benefits. In fact, I looked it up. Over the next 3 years, they're going to collect $10 billion more in EI taxes than they pay out in EI benefits, allowing the Prime Minister to grab up the difference and use it to feed his insatiable spending appetites. Canadians can't afford a bigger bite off their paychecks. Will the Prime Minister cancel his tax hikes on Canadian paychecks?
Mr. Speaker, responsible leadership means stepping up for Canadians and being there to support them. Will the Conservative leader support our measures to support Canadians? The Honourable. On behalf of everyone here, let me say thank you, not just for everything you do, but for sharing that extraordinary story with us. Your strength, your determination is an inspiration and example to us all. The federal government's decision to put a price on carbon is something that we have moved forward with, and it's one that is causing consternation amongst a broad range of people, and I understand, because
those taxes even further. Bigger bite off Canadian paychecks at a time when inflation is at a 40-year high. Doesn't he understand that now is the worst time to raise taxes? Will he cancel those tax hikes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister is quite wrong. Today, payroll taxes on the average $60,000 a year worker are about $700 higher than when we left office. And by the way, we left with a balanced budget. Yes.
My name is Justin Trudeau. I'm the Prime Minister of Canada. I stand for giving everyone a real and fair chance to succeed.
My name is Brock Blaschuk. I'm a retired corporal with the Princess Patricia Canadian Light Infantry out of here in Edmonton, 1st Battalion. I served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 7 years. I deployed in Afghanistan back in 2009 until April 3rd, where I was obviously severely wounded by a roadside bomb or improvised explosive. As you can see, I've lost my left leg. Back in August 24th, 2015, you made the promise, and I'll quote it here, "No veteran will be forced to fight their own government for the support and compensation they have earned." Yet you are still currently in a legal battle with veterans regarding equal support and compensation to their peers. As you can tell, we have two standard of veterans who fought in the same war. The ones prior to 2006 and the ones after 2006. There are two standards. One on the old Pension Act and one under this new lump sum or soon-to-be lifetime pension option. which, by the way, Mr. Prime Minister, by what you just said here, through my own determination, I'm still at work. So technically, by what you said just a little while ago, I don't qualify for. So, again, my question is, what veterans were you talking about? Was it the ones that fought for the freedoms and values that you so proudly boast about, or was it the ones who fought against? Because honestly, Mr. Prime Minister, I was prepared to be injured in the line of duty when I joined the military. Nobody forced me to join the military. I was prepared to be killed in action. What I wasn't prepared for, Mr. Prime Minister, is Canada turning its back on me.
On a couple of elements you brought up. First of all, why are we still fighting against certain veterans groups in court? Because they are asking for more than we are able to give right now. They are asking for more than we... Well, no, hang on. You're asking... We made a significant payment to Omar Khadr. Violation of Omar Khadr's fundamental charter rights as a Canadian. There are about 60 people who have returned from places like Syria and other places in the Middle East suspected of having fought with Daesh or ISIL. Those folks are being monitored and watched and accounted for by our intelligence agencies, by our security agencies. So thank you, sir, for your question. I sense we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one, but I think everyone here can agree that we thank you for your service and are sorry for your sacrifice and wish you all the very best in your coming years. And Marco Mendicino, who goes on TV panels every single night to remind you that these are not the droids you're looking for. If that's not hope and hard work, I don't know what is. We're delivering on support for low-income families on dental, and we're also moving forward with support for low-income renters. The Leader of the Opposition has an opportunity to support these measures and get help directly to Canadians. I hope he does exactly that.
Thank you. It's good to see the Prime Minister here visiting Canada to fill up the gas in his private jet.
And one of the other terrifying things about Bill C-11 is that we won't, in Canada, if this is actually enforced with the collusion, let's say, of Google and YouTube and so forth, and the forced collusion in some sense, because those companies are not going to break the law, Canadians won't even know what information is being hidden from them because the laws will take the form of invisible algorithms that merely deprioritize at the listing of content that doesn't meet the impossible criteria that have been laid down. And Bill C-11 is basically written in a way that allows the government to interfere with the promulgation of any information that they deem unacceptable for any reason, because there are so many restrictions on what you're allowed to do now that there's no possible way that any member of the alternative media can meet the criteria. It's just not possible. And it won't just be YouTube broadcasters and podcasters. It's going to be people who provide all sorts of services online, because the bill is written in such a vast manner that the provision of any services on the internet, and we're talking about the internet here, right, which is something people really depend on, that'll all fall under the invisible auspices of a tiny coterie of ideologically addled bureaucrats and algorithms. I went through this new bill, C-11, because I'm one of the people whom whom it will hypothetically affect, although I have a number of maneuvers up my sleeve, so to speak, to bypass that entirely. And I know Canadians don't understand this, but let's say that the new media, which is the internet itself, was capable of producing some of the opposition to the globalists and Trudeau that the legacy media have abandoned. And I'm thinking of people like, say, Russell Brand, who's on the left, and not to mention, any of the conservative commentators in the United States. But now what the Bill C-11 has done is basically, and this is unbelievable, I can't believe I read it correctly, they basically defined all internet content of any sort as subject to the same CRTC, Canadian Radio and Television, corporation? I don't remember the last word of that acronym.
It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't matter. They've defined them as broadcasters that are equivalent, let's say, to CBC or CTV. Now, the reason that those broadcasters are different was because the government had to parse up the airwaves, because the airwaves were actually a scarce resource. Now, and the internet is not a scarce resource. And now, as far as I can tell, reading Bill C-11, which is an unbelievably vague document, if a internet service provider, a private one, so a small business person like me, let's say, doesn't broadcast in French and English and in Indigenous languages and to any diverse range of people with disabilities and highlight Canadian content, then the government can do what it needs to do to deprioritize their distribution. And they'll do that by putting pressure on the search engine providers like YouTube and Google, or just stopping them altogether. And I read this bill, and all of it, again, Rex, too, the bill is couched in all this diversity, inclusivity, and equity terminology, which it's the same solution to every problem, right? And so not only do we have this massive press collusion with the government that's absolutely unconscionable in a Western democracy, but we also have now the government clamping down more viciously than in any other developed country on the freedom for Canadians to get access to all of the information on the internet, not just that produced by Canadians.
So, yeah, being paid for his fascistic, and finally that Trudeau with the China thing, that's very good. When he was not yet leader, and when he felt he could relax so easily and talk about these things, that's what we call the Kinsey gaffe. You say the thing you really mean. And in his case, if we were China, I could turn the environment around on a dime.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar.
The real thing there is not so much the dictatorship of China. It shows that he has a fondness for the ability to merely operate by fiat. And if you study the last 5 and 6 years, and in particular the period from COVID on, COVID was a continuous fiat that completely gutted the civil rights, the Charter of Rights. He has people fired, and then when the convoy comes, he calls them racists, homophobes, misogynists, a fringe minority that should not, note this word, that should not be tolerated. His empathy for China basically constitutes one element of the personality. He does not like opposition. He guts Parliament to make sure that there isn't any, and he makes a deal. He makes a deal with his co-signer, Mr. Singh, so that there will never be a confidence motion. And if he wants to have Parliament zoomed for another year, Mr. Singh is there with the ready salute and the genuflection to give it to him.
Yeah, well,
the greatest invasion of civil liberties, it has been passed by with so mellow a response, and that gives them the appetite. Then, if I can call up the Emergency Act and call a group of savvy, common sense citizens, fringe minority, racist, if I can set one part of the community against the other, that division. There's where the appetite comes from. Bill C-11 got away with the Emergency Act. Well, obviously, I can bring in legislation that is even more toxic. But we had other instances where you had an arson attempt in a building in Ottawa, which was dramatically enhanced by news coverage. And Mendocino, or whatever his name is, used that. They're going to burn down buildings and lock the doors so people can't get out. We need an emergency act. You had all sorts of fabricated, false, or totally misleading assertions during a pseudo-crisis. And then you had the capstone, that these people who drove 2,500 miles in February across the northern landscape to protest a given government issue actually were there and had to be paid attention to because they wanted to overthrow the Canadian government. That statement is so extreme that is beyond laughable. You know, I'm tired of people, and I'm sure you are too, because it's getting so cliched, to bringing up George Orwell, but because he put the stamp on it and gave the template. The idea that a central authority runs thought and speech and makes judgments on what is and what's not, and under the banner of diversity, inclusion, and equity, which is really a hidden ideology pumped up by vast self-righteousness and granting pseudo-infallibility to those who are sensitive. We know this is not the case. Mr. Trudeau got rid of his only Aboriginal female minister. There's equity, there's diversity. Bill C-11 is a disaster. And one more quick point. It is shameful. It is shameful to the essence that the main Canadian press are not as one voice and one intense voice saying, we're not having this. We are simply not having this. You are not going to rule on what is information and not information. But now you have, as Michael Geist said, this is an alarming thing because Geist is a very calm individual. He's a solid intellectual. And on this subject in particular, he knows what he's saying. We have the only legislation in this arena that parallels, get ready for it, North Korea. You pile all this on, and by the way, there's another reason why.
Well, that's a new first for Canada. Of the government, but I would say the worst thing that Trudeau did, it's a hybrid between invoking and then rescinding the Emergencies Act for no reason whatsoever. Then he relied on the information provided to him deceitfully by CBC, who retracted it, and then, worst of all, freezing the bank accounts and interfering with the Bitcoin exchanges, because Trudeau established a precedent now that should terrify Canadians of any political engagement whatsoever, which is that if you happen to be peripherally involved with a demonstration, no matter how legal the demonstration is at the moment, and you donate money, that first of all, you'll be tracked.
Sorry, since you're at my home, can I just get your name and your badge number, please?
I have a card here.
Okay.
It's Erica Ingram.
Thank you.
And this is just some information about peaceful protests. That's all it is.
Okay, so you saw something on my Facebook?
No, on the Facebook group.
Okay, and decided to come to my personal residence to give me information about peaceful protest?
Yes.
Okay, so are the Peterborough Police, no, you're with OPP? Are you guys now monitoring people's Facebook pages? Or Facebook groups to who comments as to what their status updates are, or what they're doing, or within the group?
Just because of the protest happening province-wide, yes, we have been monitoring the protest.
Okay.
So there's a protest coming up. I'm simply providing you with information about a peaceful protest, and now I'm leaving.
Oh, okay.
That is all.
So the Ontario Provincial Police are watching what people are doing on Facebook in different groups, whether or not they're commenting, participating, liking, and you guys are now doing service calls to give people information about peaceful protest.
Yeah, it's just a proactive measure to make sure you understand your rights about peaceful protesting.
I have a copy of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, so I'm well within that and very understanding of that. I appreciate that. I'm hoping that you guys aren't going to waste our tax dollars continuing to do this to everybody, but now it's nice to know that we're being watched. So,
if you have any questions, my cell phone number is on the card.
Do you agree that you put some posts on Facebook? Does this look familiar?
Illegal as.
Yep.
Did you put this on Facebook?
Yep.
So the question that's been raised is, were you there?
Oh, yeah.
Is that you? Or
Well,
were you there?
well, does it matter?
Yeah,
You're
well,
handing me
I'm not-
paperwork saying I've sent a
I'm
photo.
not handing you anything. I'm asking you a question. on
Well,
behalf
you've got the
of
photo, don't you?
other-
So,
That doesn't, you've put a photo on Facebook, doesn't actually confirm whether you were there or not. So I'm asking
so,
were you
so
there?
if I say no, you're not going to give me the paperwork, you're going to go home,
There's
are
no
you?
paperwork here to give you. This is
Okay.
my
So
information.
what are we here for? Are you here to serve me
Okay,
or?
what part didn't, no.
Intimidation. Yeah, I know. It's just. What are you laughing? It's loserish. It is like sad. What is this humanity? Where are we going in life? You've got the cops coming around here to tell me that I've been in a protest
No, to ask
6
you if
months
you have-
ago.
To ask you if you have been.
Yeah,
In
well, who
July,
gives a
that's
f***? How illegal is that?
Which part?
Going to a protest. Why are you guys here? Why is the
Because you're
police on my
mass gathering.
doorstep
You're-
about a protest?
Yeah. Because
Why?
it's illegal.
Black Lives Matter protests 2 weeks before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, was that illegal? Are you knocking on their doors?
Maybe.
No, you're not.
I don't know.
So, well, I won't
we're
answer
here.
that.
Okay.
I'll just no comment it.
All right.
Like, what are we here for?
Well, what part of when I...
What the f*** do you want from me?
What did you understand when I first told you why we're here?
Well, you're asking if I'm at a protest 6 months ago.
Yes.
I don't recall. I do not recall.
We've been asking.
I don't
you
recall.
here
I'm sorry.
Because of crimes, anonymous.
I don't
crimes
recall.
Stoppers report.
I don't recall.
Well, then we'll end the conversation. Unless
Yeah.
you want to say anything else.
Go ask Andrews.
What's your reason for breaching the Cho directions?
What are you talking about? I don't recall any health directions, mate. I don't watch that bullshit on the TV.
That first of all, you'll be tracked, and that's bad enough. Like, that's terrifying enough. But not only tracked, but that all your ability to interact with the entire economic system, because it's not just freezing your bank accounts, right? It's freezing your mortgage, it's freezing your visa, it's making it impossible for you to withdraw any cash, it's putting your family at risk. It's to compare this to what the Chinese are doing with the social credit system is no leap. And that's a terrible conspiratorial thing to say, but it also reflects a deep underlying reality. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many people have expressed shock and dismay to me throughout the United States and through Europe about the fact that Trudeau, well, implemented the Emergencies Act and suspended civil liberties and then froze the bank accounts, especially because Canada has had a great reputation on the financial front for 150 years. The integrity of our financial system, including our banks, has been one thing that Canada really got right. And now, well, what would you think if you were a foreign investor or anyone seriously considering doing business with Canada, when you know now that if you're a Republican, and heaven forbid a Trump supporter, but a Republican even, that your views are now deemed so extreme that it's meet and just to declare them an emergency and to steal all your money with no trial, with no due process of law, completely arbitrarily and behind the scenes. You know, Scotiabank apologized about 2 weeks ago. I don't know if any of the other big banks did.
No, they haven't.
But they said they did it under duress. Well, that's because they're bloody cowards and they're foolish as well, because they've taken a catastrophic hit to their international reputation.
C-11. Well, it's Michael Geist, and I know you follow him. Michael Geist is the professor of communication who most articulately and most deeply is warning over and over to give this bunch that can't issue a passport, that have a pay system for their own civil servants that's 3 or 4 years misfunctioning, that can't let passengers walk out of Pearson Airport within less than 24 hours, should suddenly have the government of the thoughts and reactions and speeches and positions and films and talks like this, like yours. It's absurd, but it's more than that. This is truly frightening.